Hello and welcome. I'm Pravin Shekar, your host for the Global Referral Summit, and it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Ivan Misner. Ivan is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, the world's largest business networking organization, founded in 1985. Ivan is called the father of modern networking by CNN and one of the top networking experts by Forbes. He is a New York Times best-selling author who's written 23 books, including his latest book, Who's in Your Room? Among his many awards, he has been named Humanitarian of the Year by the Red Cross. He is also an amateur magician and a black belt in karate. Ivan is here to share his experiences and thoughts on how to follow up after meetings. So thank you for coming over, Ivan.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
So, as with all the sessions here, we start with a rapid fire session where I'll ask a bunch of questions and I request you to answer in 15 seconds or less. Don't worry, some of these questions will be covered in detail a bit later. Ivan, what is the 24/7/30 follow-up system?
Oh, it's a way to follow up effectively with people within 24 hours, send them a note within 7 days. You connect with them on social media, and within 30 days, you set up a face-to-face meeting.
How does sending a handwritten note within 24 hours help me get more referrals?
Well, it doesn't have to be a handwritten note. It could be an email, but I recommend a handwritten note because very few people do that anymore. It's just not done. And so a card or a handwritten note is very effective. Use of send out cards, which is a service in North America and in some other continents, is a great way of reaching out to people in a very personal way.
How can I avoid losing contact after meeting someone at a networking event?
Well, through the 24/7/30 system, no question about it. That's the way to stay connected with people. People are always asking me, how do you follow up? That's the process. And I'm happy to talk in depth about what that process really entails later if you'd like.
When can networking go horribly, horribly wrong?
When you try to use it as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity. All too often, people will meet someone at an event and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, let's do business. Or worse yet, they'll hand me 3 of their business cards and say, hey, would you mind referring me to other people that might need my service? And I'm like, I don't even know you. I'm not going to refer you. So that's when it horribly goes wrong, when you're trying to sell rather than build relationships.
How has Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram changed the face of networking today?
So I think, certainly Facebook has redefined what a friend is, true friends take longer. There was a recent study by the Journal of Sociology and Psychology that says that it takes 200 hours of connecting with people to create a true friendship. 200 hours to have a close friendship. Just a standard friendship is at least 90 hours. So that's really what a friend is. It's not just clicking on a social media platform. That said, I love Facebook. I'm active on Facebook, but they've redefined what a friend is.
Farming versus hunting for referrals.
Yeah. So networking is way more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about cultivating relationships with other business professionals. And what tends to happen is that people, rather than use networking to build relationships, they use networking to try to sell. And people go to networking events and they feel like everyone they've met has been trying to sell to them. So they leave feeling slimed, like they need to go get a shower because everyone was trying to sell to them. And that's a bad example of networking, doing that direct selling.
Referral sources. Do I look for people with big reputations or big connections? What do I look for?
When you're networking up, you certainly want people with the big reputations and success. But I think that the key to successful networking is diversity. You see, networks are by nature clumpy. That's the technical term. They're cluster-like. I tend to hang out with people like myself. You tend to hang out with people like yourself. And that's not just ethnicity, although ethnicity is one of it. It could be age, it could be gender, it could be educational background, various demographics. We tend to hang out with people that are similar to ourselves. The truth is, if you want to be successful at networking, you need to have a diverse network of contacts. Because if you have someone who's different than you in your cluster, they are a connector to another cluster of people. So the more diverse your network is, the more it's connected to clusters you wouldn't otherwise have.
Good. The last question here. What's your one metric for measuring referral success?
Okay, so the one metric, I love the one secret kinds of questions. The one secret to anything, in my opinion, is there is no one secret. There's never one secret. It is almost always a recipe. That there are a series of things that determine referral success, that determine one's business success, that determines one's health. And oh, by the way, if you want to cook a good meal, it takes more than one ingredient. And so it's like the recipe to a good meal, it's always a series of things.
Lovely. We move on to the interview section where we obviously will have a lot more time to get some excerpts from you. Could you go ahead and explain to our viewers what is the VCP process and how it works?
Yeah, so VCP is the core of everything I teach. It's the foundation of everything that I teach in networking. It stands to visibility, credibility, profitability. First, you must be visible. People have to know who you are and what you do. Then and only then can you move to credibility, where people know who you are, they know what you do, and they know you're good at it. And then once you've gotten to credibility, you move to profitability, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to give you referrals on an ongoing reciprocal basis. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is that people, there's a fourth stage I didn't mention, and people try to do business at that fourth stage. It comes before visibility. It's called invisibility. And I have met so many people, they'll come up to me and like I said, they'll hand me cards and they'll say, would you refer me to people? And I'm like, I don't even know you. No, I'm not gonna, I don't say that. But I'll tell you what I usually say when people do something like that. Sometimes it's like, I happen to have a couple of people that I've met during my lifetime that are very successful, one billionaire. And so when people find that out, they come up and they say, hey, would you introduce me to so-and-so? I have this great product. And so I don't even know who they are. So what I generally say is, hi, I'm Ivan. I'm sorry, what was your name? And that's, a little bit of a mindset reset for them. They're like, well, my name is, so-and-so. So the VCP process, you gotta understand it if you want to build your business through networking. Let me give you one other piece. I did a speech in London years ago, 900 people in the audience. It was an all-day event, a lot of networking. I said, how many of you are here today hoping to, maybe just possibly sell something? Probably 900 people raised their hands. I said, fantastic. How many of you are here today? Second question, how many of you are here today hoping to, maybe just possibly buy something? No one raised their hands. Not one single person. This is what I call the networking disconnect. People show up at networking meetings wanting to sell, but nobody's there to buy. So why go? You go to work through the VCP process. When you're working through the VCP process, it's about building relationships, and that is what's good networking.
Lovely. I would now request you to dwell a lot more on the 24/7/30 process, Ivan.
Yeah, so I love this concept. It was first written about by myself and Brennan Scanlon in a book called Avoiding the Networking Disconnect. And here's how it goes. Within 24 hours of meeting someone, reach out to them and thank them for the meeting. It could be email, personal handwritten note, whatever works for you. Whatever you're going to do that. I like to tell people handwritten note is always best, but I'm horrible at handwritten notes, so I'm not always good at that. Sometimes I'll do it, but usually it'll be an email. I really believe, though, the best is handwritten notes. So you reach out to them, and here's what you say. It was really nice meeting you yesterday at BNI or at the Chamber of Commerce or wherever you met them. It was very nice meeting you. I enjoyed our conversation on whatever you spoke about, and I hope our paths cross again. That's it. Now, for your listeners, for your viewers, you got to hear this. Don't sell to them. Don't sell to them, okay? You just reach out and you say, "It was nice meeting you." It's one of the reasons why I recommend you write notes as you're talking to people. You might write a note on the back of their card. You might write a note in a little notepad that you have. By the way, in some cultures, it's completely inappropriate to write on a business card, particularly in Asian cultures. Don't do that ever. Don't even ask if it's for permission. It's not appropriate. So at least have a notepad, write some notes so that when you drop them your note, you can remind them of the conversation. That's within 24 hours. Within 7 days, reach out to them on social media. Now here it's going to take a little explanation. You have to reach out where they are, not where you are. Maybe you like Twitter, but they're more active on Facebook. It doesn't really matter what you want. If you want to build a relationship with that person, you need to go where they are, not where you are. Now, I'll tell you how I learned this. True, absolutely true story. I learned this from my children. Because when my 32-year-old daughter was in her teens, I would call her on mobile phone. She wouldn't answer. I'm like, really? Okay. Then I texted her. Boom, responded her right away. I'm like, honey, you know this is a telephone. You know you can actually talk into it. She said, yeah, Dad. So I realized if I wanted to connect with my daughter throughout the day, I had to text her. Then my next daughter, when she was in her teens, early 20s, if I called her, nothing. If I texted her, nothing. I now went to my wife and I said, what do I do? She's not responding to me. My wife said, now this was years ago. Okay, she's 27, 28. And this was at least 8 years ago, maybe more. She said, you have to WhatsApp her. And I said, what's WhatsApp? I don't know what WhatsApp is. So I had to download WhatsApp. So because if I called her, nothing, text her, nothing, but if I WhatsApped her, boom, she'd respond. Then came my son. Now my son, he's a gamer, loves to play games. So call him, nothing, text him, nothing. He thought WhatsApp was old school, didn't want to do it. He was the youngest. I realized he loves to play games. And one of the games platforms that he plays on is a platform called Steam. So I signed up, when this happened, I was like in my late 50s. I signed up for Steam so that I could buy a game because they have an instant messaging feature. I signed up, bought a game, instant messaged my son after calling him and texting him. But when I instant messaged him, boom, he responded right then. What that taught me was if I really truly wanted to stay connected to my children, I had to go where they were, not where I was. I'd rather pick up the phone and call them. I'd rather send them an email maybe, but heaven forbid, email for young people, no. So I had to go where they were. So if you really want to build a relationship with someone, you got to go where they are, not where you are. By the way, I hang out mostly on Facebook. So go to facebook.com/Ivan Misner BNI founder, and you'll find me and can stay connected with me on Facebook. So 24/7/30. Oh, and by the way, when you connect with them on social media, what you do is just comment. Say, hey, we met a week ago at such and such event. Thought I would just touch bases with you here on social media. It's great to see, your content. And don't sell to them. Don't sell to them. 30 days, last part. Within 30 days, you reach out and you could call them, email them, whatever works for you, and then reach out to them and say, hey, we met a month ago. Remind them, we met a month ago. I've been following some of the things you're doing on social media. I love this topic and that topic that you put up. I'd love to get together with you face-to-face, have a coffee, and learn more about what you do. And you set up an appointment and you go there and don't sell to them. I call it sales Tourette's. people just can't stop themselves. They're like, well, you got to buy my product or service. They just can't hold it in. You got to hold it in. Why? Because it's about working through the VCP process. You're just at visibility with them at 30 days. They know who you are. You have no credibility. And people say to me, well, it never hurts to ask, right? Wrong. It does hurt to ask if you ask too soon. So build credibility before you start asking for anything. That's the 24/7/30 system.
Lovely. Beautiful story. Amazing learning. Don't sell. That leads me to segue into, for example, a conference that you spoke to, Ivan, with 900 people, and you get off stage, you have a whole lot of people bombarding you with cards. Now, how do you know that someone is a good prospect? In my case, if I'm going ahead to a business conference and I find a lot of people, how do I find out if so-and-so is going to be a good prospect or a good referral for me? How do I find that out?
Well, there's this great system called the 24/7/30 process. That's the way you find out. Right. Look, if you exchange cards, and if they look at that card and they say, wow, you know what, I've been looking for someone in this field, which happens occasionally, then if they don't say that, they're not looking at the moment. They're not looking. And if they're not looking, trying to sell to them, it's too early. Or even trying to ask for a referral from them is too early. So that's where you got to build the relationship. Look, even a blind squirrel can find a nut. Businesses will stumble over business. And when you go to a networking event, you'll stumble over business from time to time. That's not networking. Networking is about building relationships. When you build relationships, and that's the whole farming versus hunting mentality. So I would recommend you use the 24/7/30 system with the concept of VCP in the background.
Now, when I meet someone, will the VCP help me in terms of asking questions? And if so, what kind of open-ended asking questions should I go ahead and ask, Ivan?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. And so in a couple of my books, I think the last book I put it in was Networking Like a Pro, the second edition. I talk about using a technique called the GAINS exchange. It's an acronym. It stands for goals, accomplishments, interests, networks, and skills. GAINS, goals, accomplishments, interests, networks, and skills. So what I recommend is when you do that one-to-one, so you've 24/7, now it's 30, you're doing that one-to-one, I recommend that you send them, and there's a little form, but it's pretty easy. It's in Networking Like a Pro. You send them a letter or the actual form, and you say, when I meet people, I like to learn as much about them as possible. Would you be kind enough to just fill this out for me? I'll fill mine out, or here's mine in advance. And if you could do something similar so that when we get together, we can move quicker through the process of getting to know one another. I'd love to know your goals, some of your accomplishments, some of your interests. Now, the power of that is that if you want to network effectively, you find overlapping areas of interest. When you can find overlapping areas of interest, all of a sudden, you've got a connection with somebody. And that connection can lead to building a relationship quicker. So I recommend you use the GAINS exchange to expedite the process.
Lovely. Now I've got a completely different question to you. Exit strategy. Now, when you go into a conference, there are a lot of people, there are loners, you swap cards, but you just can't get rid of them. What's your exit strategy?
Well, I think people really struggle with this, and I'm not entirely sure why. For me, I think it's pretty simple. First, let me tell you what you shouldn't do. Never ever apologize and say, well, I'm sorry, I need to meet someone else. Never say, look, there's some other people here I need to see. I think that's just maybe a little rude. It makes people feel unimportant. And I don't even think you need to say, well, it's nice meeting you, but I need to go network with some others. I don't think you need to do that. For me, it's a pretty simple process. And I've written about this. I've done some articles. If you go to ivanmisner.com and look for leaving a conversation. Do a search on that. You'll find an article I wrote. For me, the simplest technique is to simply say, it was really very nice meeting you. May I have one of your cards? And if they ask for mine, I'm happy to give them my card. And I take their card and I say, I make a comment, I hope our paths cross again someday. Very nice to meet you. I shake hands and it's over. It's subtle, it's professional, it's polite. They don't feel like I'm trying to go to someone else. And let me tell you, sometimes when you speak on stage, you're just, it's a crush. And very few people in my lifetime have said they felt like I brushed them off. Because you got to do this in a way that you're not trying to brush them off, but you do want to meet as many people as possible. So you have a meaningful, short conversation and end the conversation by asking them for their card, thanking them for the conversation, hoping that we stay in touch. Shake hands. That easy.
So Ivan, you are the founder of the BNI Institute, the BNI Charitable Trust. Now, from a networking perspective, is it always on for you? Are you always open for networking? What is your mindset here?
Well, networking is a lifestyle. It's a way of living. It's a way of doing business. And in one of my books, Truth or Delusion, we ask this question. And I think this will answer your question. We say, in Truth or Delusion, we pitched a question and we said, is this truth or is this delusion? Here was the question we pitched in the book. You can network anywhere, anytime, any place, even at a funeral. Truth or delusion? Well, the obvious sounding answer is delusion. But the answer truly is truth. But here's the caveat. And it's a big, big caveat. I believe you should be able to network anywhere, anytime, any place, but you must always honor the event. So going to a funeral and passing your business cards around is not honoring the event at all. For me, networking is about building relationships. That's it. It is that simple and yet that complicated. Building relationships is not easy. So it's about building relationships. And so if you're at a funeral or at a church function or whatever you're at that may not be business focused, wherever you're at, if you have an opportunity to build a relationship, that's networking. And so if I meet somebody that expresses a need to me, for example, I was at a church event once, at a potluck lunch. And you shouldn't be going around passing out your business card at any religious organization's event. And I didn't, but I asked him questions. And in a conversation with this gentleman that I was talking to, he shared with me that he was trying to connect with some charitable organization for a particular purpose. And I said, I know somebody there. This is the kind of person you want to talk to there. And then here at this church function, he pulls out his wallet, he gives me his card, and he says, would you please call me? I really need to meet that person. So if helping other people is your version of networking, which it is for me, then the answer to your question is, yeah, you can network anywhere, anytime, any place, even at a funeral.
Good. Now I'm going to bring in a cultural connotation here. Where I come from, it's a myth that salespeople, networkers, referrals are all extroverts. Now, I can say I'm the CEO of a technology company. I'm good in front of a computer, put me there and I'm happy, but in front of people, I cannot talk, I cannot. So what happens is, because the bulk of our viewers today are entrepreneurs and marketers from the small to medium-sized businesses, it is delegated to someone else to go to these networking events, get as many cards as they want, and then come back and then figure out, oh, that conference or that event did not work for us. So the VCP 24/7/30 definitely works, but from a cultural connotation perspective, what would be your message for the entrepreneurs here?
Is your question about introverts versus extroverts?
Yes.
So this will surprise you. About 10 years ago, I was having dinner with my wife, and our children were we had one in college and two in high school, and they were out at some high school thing that night. And it was just my wife and I. And, we had been just alone for dinner in a long time. It was very nice. And I said something to her about, oh, honey, you know me, I'm such an extrovert. I don't even remember what the discussion was, but I told her I'm an extrovert. And she looked at me, she's like, yeah, no, you're not. I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm not an extrovert? Of course I'm an extrovert. I run the world's largest networking organization. She's like, okay, whatever you say, honey. I'm like, no, you can't do that. I'm a keynote speaker. You can't say I'm not an extrovert. She's like, it's whatever you say. If you, like, all right, why do you think I'm an introvert? So then she said, I've been reading this book called The Introvert and Extrovert in Love. And she says, here are the characteristics of an introvert. And so she's reading off these characteristics. I'm like, all right, that's a little like me. Okay, that's a little like me. Yeah, okay, that's a little. And then she got one that nailed me. She said, introverts love to recharge their batteries by being alone or with family. They don't go out to recharge their batteries. I'm like, oh, okay, that's me. But I am not an introvert. Now I'm mad. So I go into my office and I get on Google and I find a test that I could take because I'm going to show her I am not an introvert. And I take this test and it pops up and it says, congratulations, Ivan Misner, you are an introvert. Who is, and here's the key to your question, who is a situational extrovert. So that when you're talking about a subject that you feel comfortable with, you come across as an extrovert. When you're with friends, people you trust, you come across as an extrovert. Otherwise, you are a total introvert. Now go apologize to your wife. Okay, didn't say that last part, but what I did. So my point is, sometimes people are situational extroverts. But they are basically introverts and they consider themselves introverts. I didn't, but now all of a sudden it hit me. Think about the kind of organization I created, BNI. One person per profession, small groups. We get together on a regular basis every week. We get to know each other, trust each other. If I was an extrovert, it hit me. I would have created a party, big mixers where everybody mixes and mingles. I feel uncomfortable. I'm the founder of BNI. I feel uncomfortable in those large events. And so here's the answer, I think, to the resolution of the heart of your question. Both introverts and extroverts can be good at networking. Absolutely. Here's the deal. Extroverts can meet anybody, anyplace, anytime. They're great at meeting people. Here's their problem. They can't shut up. They love to talk. And what's their favorite subject? Themselves. They love to talk about themselves. Not everyone, but as a rule, I think that's pretty accurate. Introverts struggle meeting people, but they're good listeners. They're good at listening. So they have a hard time meeting people, and you have to teach them how to do that. But once you work on it, and there are techniques to do that, but once you do that, then if they understand how to connect with people, they're great at listening. So both introverts and extroverts have strengths and weaknesses in networking. The key is to learn how to use your strength and find tools to deal with your weakness. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely, Ivan. And who would have known that introverted Ivan goes ahead and builds world's largest networking organization? I learned
You can find that. By the way, you can find that story. I wrote that week. I wrote that story down on my blog. So if you go to ivanmisner.com and look at introvert, you'll find the blog where I was like, I can even tell you the title. It's OMG. Oh my goodness. OMG. I'm an introvert. That's the title.
Lovely, lovely. Now, you did mention you've written 23 books. You mentioned a book now. Are there any other books that you would recommend for our viewers today? I love books, and I've been collecting this as a standard question across all the interviews purely to pick those books up and read. So any recommendations, books that
Well, I'd love to talk for a moment about a book I just wrote, but before I do that, let me suggest a book to, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to scale your business, you want to grow, the book I picked up in the mid 80s, it's in a new edition of it. I'd recommend it highly, is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, The Entrepreneurial Myth by Michael Gerber. I didn't know Michael then. I read the book. I used the strategies in that book to scale BNI. BNI now has 8,840 locations in 73 countries. I used the concepts in the book, The E-Myth, written in the 80s, but updated recently. And so I would urge you to take a look at that book, The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth. fantastic book to help teach people how to scale a business. Book that I just wrote, I would love to have people take a look at. It's called Who's in Your Room? That's the book, Who's in Your Room? And it's the secret to creating your best life. And you may wonder, why is a networking guy writing about creating a great life? Well, the truth of the matter is that the quality of your life depends on the people in your life. The quality of your network depends on the people in your network. And if you're really good at making sure to surround yourself with quality people, then you are going to have an amazing network and an amazing life. And we worked on this book for a long time to make it very actionable, to give specific techniques for people to be successful. It's called Who's in Your Room?
Lovely. I'm looking forward to pick up a copy and read that out. And Introverted Ivan, thank you very much for coming on our show today. I look forward to stay in touch. And for all the viewers here, ivanmeisner.com, that's the site to go to. Thank you very much, Ivan.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.